Are you ready to unlock your full potential? Motivational speaker, the comeback coach, and goal crusher Joe Rivera brings you inspiring leaders, incredible stories, and valuable lessons on how you can change, grow, and reforge your life. Now, here's your host, Joe Rivera.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Reforge Your Life Show. I'm your host, Joe Rivera, and here at the Reforge Your Life Show, we like to show you that the comeback is more than possible, and I'm super stoked about bringing this lady to the show, man. She's awesome. Y'all are going to love her. She's a podcaster, a coach. Pam Covarrubias, welcome to the show. I'm so grateful for you being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I was excited when we decided to do this.
Yeah.
I've heard your story, but I can't tell it as good as you can. Nobody can. So I'd love for you to share with the audience your story and let them know a little bit about you.
For sure. I am an immigrant to the U.S. I came when I was 19 years old with a maleta, with a piece of luggage and a dream. And I didn't know how the college system worked as a first gen. And so I just found a college and knocked on the door, and they were like, "What are you doing? There's a process to this." And so that's where the journey started, on figuring out how things work in the US without having any type of guidance. And here we are. Lots of things happened in between, but it was, a piece of luggage and a dream, and one step in front of the other.
Oh, I love that. Love that. What are some of those challenges in between? Because man, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Coming from another country. What country was it you came from again?
Mexico.
Mexico. So coming from another country, and coming here with just a maleta in there. You know what I mean? And a dream is powerful in itself. But I'm curious, and I'm sure there's people in the audience who are curious about some of those challenges that you spoke about. There's a lot in between. Can you give us a little bit on that? Like elaborate a little bit?
Totally. So the first challenge was the fact that I thought in my head the process was going to be linear, and it wasn't at all. And so it was navigating the intricacies of the education system, because something that is very unique to my story is that I'm a U.S. citizen. I was born here, but I grew up in Mexico City. And so the first challenge that I encountered when I got to college was, you're a U.S. citizen, but you have a foreign transcript. And so we can't treat you as an international student, nor are you an in-state or even out-of-state student because you have a foreign transcript. So that was like a whole weird thing. And we had to figure it out. And that was kind of like the first challenge that I had to overcome. And I was here by myself. And so at 19 years old, I had to be like, well, there's two options: keep going or stop. And I wasn't going back. So I just had to keep going.
What was it that was inside of you that said, I'm not going, like, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep moving forward? Because there's a lot of people who would say, you know what, I'm going to put my hands up. I'm going to quit. I'm going to go back to being, where I was comfortable at. And I'm going to stay in that comfort zone rather than going on the other side and seeing where the magic happens.
I think I've always been guided by my curiosity. I was more curious about the possibility than to go back to the familiar. And that's what led me to keep going, was like, well, what if it actually works out? What if this, because they had literally, the counselors were like, we've never encountered this. Like, we literally don't know how to classify you. And my curiosity was like, well, what if you figure it out? There's always a first. I'm an eldest daughter, so I'm used to being a first on many things. And so when I encounter that moment, I'm like, well, then figure it out. Let's figure it out together. And we did.
What
It's a curiosity.
Yeah, I mean, man, curiosity is a blessing. A lot of people say curiosity kills a cat. Nah, I think it makes it grow even more, right?
I think so too.
But hold on. So, what was that figuring out process like? What did that look like?
It took a lot because what they ended up deciding is that in order for me to not be considered a foreign exchange or international student, then I had to become either a out-of-state student or in-state student. And so I had to do a revalidación, like I had to basically translate my transcript, and they gave me an option. They said, okay, so if we can just translate your transcript and figure out the similarities to a US transcript, and here are the options. You either work for a year in the state, so you can have taxes, pay taxes in the state, then you become an in-state student, or you can start school and pay out of state tuition. And I was like, oh no, we're gonna because it's a big difference out of state and state. So I was like, if I can work for a year, pay taxes for a year, I'll do that, and then I'll start school. And I did that. And I think going back to my curiosity, how I think my life has been weaved by curiosity, because there's so many other stories that if it wasn't for my curiosity, I wouldn't be where I am. Like, I wouldn't start podcasting if it wasn't for my curiosity. I kept the idea of me going to college because I came with my maleta and my dream was to finish college, because when I was in Mexico, I tried to get into 2 universities and I couldn't. And so I was like, okay, so where can I go that I can actually make it happen? And so I was determined. And even though I worked for a year, I could have stayed working. Because, once you get the taste of money, then it's like, well, why do I? Because I was making actually really good money because I was bilingual, and this is in the Midwest. And so the moment I interviewed, and the person that interviewed me, he was a white man who had done a missionary trip and learned how to speak Spanish. He was like, he started asking me questions in Spanish, and I totally answered. And he was like, "Oh, you speak better Spanish than me. We're gonna pay you more money for that." And so I was making solid money for a 19-year-old, first job in the U.S. And that could have been an opportunity for me to be like, "Oh, I don't need to go to college anymore because I'm already making money." But I had a goal to complete that degree, and I went back a year later. I showed them my taxes, and they were like, all right, in-state student it is. And we finished.
That's awesome. To go for that goal and then, take on that goal, accomplish it. How important was it to build that confidence of completing college, accomplishing that goal towards you being able to take on and shatter other goals in your life? Because I'm sure there's been quite a few that you've shattered along the way.
Yeah, I think the thing that I continuously remind myself is the evidence that I built when I was young and curious. I had no resources. I had zero mentors. I mean, I built mentors over time as I was there, but in the beginning, it was like, you figure it out. And so as I continued growing, I kept reminding myself, look, if you were able to come with a dream and a set of clothes for a week and you figure it out, what else? You crossed the whole border. You learned a new language. You can do anything else. You can start a business, of course.
Of course. I mean, man, and you mentioned something that's so important for the audience to pick up on. And I think every successful entrepreneur that I've come across figures this little, I guess you could call a little trick out, right? We don't worry about the how. We don't know that we're going to figure it out because we've done it before and we can do it again. And it's so important for the listeners out there to realize that And when you have a vision of doing something in your life and there's somewhere where you want to go, just start doing it, man. Don't worry about the how. It's gonna get figured out. It's gonna get bumpy along the way, but you'll figure it out
Mhm.
with those bumps in the road. And
Yes.
it's so important. And man, congratulations on coming here with a maleta in your hand, 1 week worth of clothing, and figuring it out to where you are now. I mean, man, that's so powerful. So you deserve a congratulations on that for sure.
Thank you.
We're gonna talk.
Thank you. And so many people do that, you know?
Yeah, no, so many people do that, right? But there's a lot who give up, and don't.
Mhm.
There's a lot who come here with the maleta in their hand and they settle for less. They don't live
Yes.
to their full potential because they end up getting comfortable and staying in that comfort zone. And the fact that you didn't do that and knew that you wanted more, you didn't just stop at, you know what, let me get my degree in school. And that's it. By the way, what did you go to school for?
So that's another fun story. I wanted to be an architect, and because my grandfather was a lawyer, and so if you grew up with any family member that has like education, it's especially in Latino families, is like lawyer, doctor, accountant, engineer. My dad's an engineer. My grandfather was a lawyer. My dad's an engineer that turned into a musician, and now he's a psychotherapist. So that's a whole other thing. But because I grew up with my grandparents, I wanted to go the safe path, which was what is the most secure career. My grandpa, he went with like a very cozy, secure path, and he retired. He had the pension, and like, and so I had that model, and I was like, well, what's another degree that I could make it like cozy and secure? And it was architecture because I have always been creative and I really enjoyed it. But I got to college and I didn't know what I didn't know. So that's why I started with I didn't know anything. And when it was time to declare my major, the counselor was like, well, it's time, like, you've been taking all your gen eds. Now it's time to declare your major. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go for architecture. And he was like, oh, wait a minute. This is not, we don't have that. You have to transfer to a bigger university in order to get, like, we don't have architecture. You can do some courses here, but then you would have to transfer because it's a much smaller college. And that could have been another like shattered dream. But then I asked myself, going back to my curiosity, how do I, well, not even how, but what is the next best step for me in this moment? Because I had already moved a whole country into the middle of the US. That was challenging in and of itself as a brown girl in the US. And I was going to have to transfer to a whole other state because that was where the next university was. And so I went inward and I asked myself, what's the next best move for me? And in that case, it was to stay and to choose a major that aligned with me at the moment because I bought my first house when I was 21. And so, there were other goals that I was like, okay, I'm still going to finish college because that was the initial goal, but I want to become a real estate investor. And so let's start that. And moving required me to focus on different things, which it didn't align anymore. So I stayed and I became a graphic designer. Long answer to a short question.
I mean, so you became the jack of all trades pretty much.
Kind of. Yeah. I mean, I have ADHD. And so that's been totally a pattern for me to be. That's why I love talking about curiosity, because as someone with a neurodiverse brain, I do chase a lot of things that are fun for me at the time. And so, I mean, I was known as a multi-passionate person for a long time, and then I've narrowed down. But I still love a lot of things.
Listen, I got ADHD too, so I know all about that, and
It's fun.
down. Yeah, it is fun. But the narrowing down is important, right? Because especially when it comes to purpose and being aligned with that purpose,
Hmm.
uh, and I'm curious though, because there's so much there that these challenges that come up, coming into a new country, finishing college, then you're not even doing I mean you're not doing now what you went to college for, right? Pretty much.
No.
And then starting, the entrepreneurship. There's a lot of stuff a lot of challenges that come along that way, right? And
Hmm.
as beliefs that come to our mind that we have to kind of push through and overcome, and they continue to arise, and then we got to put them away again, and throw them in the back seat. So what did some of those beliefs look like that you had to shatter in order to get to where you are today? And maybe you still have them, but you've learned how to control them.
For sure. I think I call them wounds because I do think with every situation that we live through, we do create a belief. Just like when I came to this country and I said, I'm going to go to college, I had the belief that I had to finish. And so that I think a belief can either drive you or sink you. And so the beliefs that I have worked through and continue to, I think personal development is an ever going thing. One that I have worked through for a long time has been the use of my voice, taking up space, using my voice. And when I bought a microphone from a retired rapper because I wanted to start a podcast, then I kind of hid behind my guest stories because I wasn't ready to share my own. But it was still a practice to ask questions, to be curious. And so the biggest one I think that has been a thread in my life has been the use of my voice and taking up space. And however, to your point of not settling, I feel like I've challenged myself to show up, to keep asking questions, to be curious. And then my voice somehow has been, growing.
Yeah, yeah, and you mentioned something there that's really important. How you at first were using the podcast, using your voice, um, and using other people's stories to hide behind because you weren't ready to share yours yet. How important was it for you to get through that and share your story and be able to give the gift you were given back to help other people? Because I believe, our stories don't belong to us anyway. I believe we're given our stories to be able to go out there and help others with. But
Mhm.
I'm curious, know, what was that challenge like, and what was the turning point to overcome that?
So I'll bring it back to a college professor who it was an English class and I turned in a paper and he gave me a C. I think it was a C minus. And in the note with red ink, he said, I gave you a C because you have a lot of ESL grammatical challenges. And that was the first time I was boxed. So I had always been Bamco Rubias when I was growing up. But the moment I crossed to the US, then I was put in a box. Oh, you're a Latina. Oh, you are an ESL student. Oh. So there were I think the US is the country of boxes. Like you have to fit a box, otherwise you are completely a misfit. And so that teacher, that professor put me in this ESL box. However, when I received that paper, it didn't feel right because I had been profiled. I didn't know what that was. And so I took it to one of my first mentors, Tay Triggs, and she was the director of the Multicultural Center at the college. And I showed her the paper and I was like, hey, this doesn't feel right. What do you think? I didn't have the power in my voice to say something, but she did. And so she read the paper, she read the comments, and she was like, this is not valid. The way that he profiled you, because of your last name, because of like all of these errors that you did, they're valid for any English speaker would have made them. So that was unnecessary for him to call out the fact that English is your second language. And so she was my first teacher to give me permission to use my voice. She sent an email to the professor and was like, hey, I'm advocating for my student and I need you to give her another chance to write another paper. And he did. But that was the first moment when I realized the power that my voice had. And even though I didn't use it, but she used it. And so she modeled a way to use my voice. And that's how I realized how important it is for us to share our stories, for us to take up space, for us to use our voice to say, this is not right. And how could we make it right?
It's so important. I mean, to share your story, especially when you've had one that can impact other people's lives. But it's also important to speak up in general and or in, right? Because I always say closed mouths don't get fed, number one. And number two, when you're holding those feelings inside, what you're creating is, that catabolic draining energy that, you start holding resentments. You start, there's nothing good that's going to come from holding, your feelings inside and what you want to speak about and what you want to say. There's nothing on that side. The magic is on the other side. When you actually do speak up and you do speak your mind and you do, say how you feel and you show that vulnerability, that's where the magic happened in your professional life, your relationships, just in everything. I mean, it's so important to speak up. I'm curious, when you crack through, that belief of, and I can't speak up, and the beliefs that you had to shatter through to get to where you are, and realize how powerful your voice is, your story is. I believe that when we crack through those beliefs, we uncover, these values, core values that we live by, that we're able to go back and kind of dig in our toughest times, that make us true to who we are. What are some of those core values that you hold on to lean into when, this ever growing world of personal development shows up and those belief systems kind of pop up and you got to put them to the side again? What's some of the things that you kind of dig into the toolbox, those core values you hold on to?
I love core values because I actually have a framework that I use to make decisions based on core values. And my top 3 core values are fun, curiosity, and collaboration. And everything I do, fun, curiosity, and collaboration. And everything I do has to be fun. It needs to bring some spark curiosity in some ways. And I do believe in abundance. I think el sol sale para todos, the sun shines for everyone, and it doesn't only say, it will only shine for certain trees. It shines for everyone. And so I do believe in collaboration, and I'm always looking for ways to highlight other people. This is why my podcast for a long time was only sharing other people's stories, because I believe the collaborative part of me probably comes from me being a Latina and the hospitality cultural aspect that we have of if I'm eating and you show up, I'll give you half my plate. That's no problem, because that's how we're just raised. And I bring that into my life always. However, when I said earlier, I have this framework of making decisions, the people that I work with in any capacity also have to have some of those values. Not everyone has fun as their core value. However, they need to be curious. Integrity is another core value that I have that's really important. And so if I encounter someone that says that they will do something, but they don't do it, then that makes me doubt about their integrity. And so also, it's not just me living with my core values. It's also kind of like holding up a mirror to say, whoever it is that I have an encounter with, what core values are they living by that will either we're going to vibe or we're not. It doesn't make people that we won't vibe like bad people. It's just that we just don't vibe.
No, I mean, I believe that, that the people that you are aligned with are people who, you share similar core values. You have to share similar beliefs. And those are the people who are going to vibe. You're the people that are going to help them grow, right? Those are the who are going to move the needle in your life. Hanging out with people who aren't aligned with who you are, that ain't going to do nothing for you. That ain't going to help elevate you. All that's going to do is bring you down and drain your energy.
Right.
So I'm glad you shared that, because that's so important for the listeners out there, man. You got to surround yourself with the right people who are aligned with where you're trying to go in life. So Pam, I'd love for you to share with the audience, where that girl who came in with the maleta and 1 week's worth of clothes, and where she is now, what she's doing, and tell them what you have going on out there, where they can find you.
For sure. So that girl that came with a maleta also grew up with a single mom who had a business and lost it. And so talking about beliefs, that girl believed that owning your own business was a risk because you could lose everything. However, I realized that I was pretty unemployable because I grew up in a business, like I was always at the forefront of my mom's store. I was talking to vendors with her all the time. And so I think you'll resonate with this. Like, it's just within you, right? Like any corporate job that I had, I wanted to fix everything because everything was broken. And so I realized that I was unemployable. I quit my job and I decided to start my business. And where that girl is now, she is now supporting first generation women and femmes own their voice, stand in their power, and share their story, whatever that looks like. I became a coach because I do believe in personal development. It's always been within me. And I do a lot of inner niña work. I do a lot of inner child work, precisely because what we've been talking about. That little girl, that little boy, that little human that at some point witnessed some realities, created beliefs. And so the work that we do is we go back to that inner child and ask them, what is it that you believe to be true? And how could we heal that part to say you can actually do what you wish you want to do? Because the belief is that whisper that says you can't, because we have somehow evidence at some point that it couldn't be done. And so I do coaching, and I have a podcast called Café con Pam, where I share my story and other people's stories. You're one of them. You've been a guest in my show. And there's over 400 stories that we've shared over the course of time. It's been a lot of fun. And I started this podcast as another curious thing. I was curious about people that had done amazing things, and I wanted to see models. So I started asking questions, and here we are. And you can find me at cafeconpam.com. It's the easiest place, and happy to be here.
Awesome, man. All that's going to be in the show notes, guys, where to find her. And man, don't you love when people tell you can't do something now? We just prove it wrong and go, I can't do that. You sure? Let me show you how to do. Let me show you how to.
Let me show you. Yes. It happened when I quit my job. My former boss said, "What are you going to do next?" And I said, "I think I'm going to work for myself." And he laughed and he said, "Well, if you do, it's really hard, but I'll be proud if you do." And it's been almost almost 10 years and yeah, and I don't care if he's proud. I think he's proud because he somehow he knows about me. But that was one of those moments that I was like, "Oh, is he really doubting me? Now I really want to make it happen."
I love it, man. And man, you just gotta remove that word "can't" from your vocabulary, man. It's just it doesn't do you any good out there. It's not a word that you should even believe in. You gotta believe that you can do
Correct.
anything you put your mind to, you know? So
Yeah.
a couple of questions that I ask all my guests. The first is, what does the word purpose mean to you?
Oof. Do I need to answer in one word? Is it like a rapid fire or just expand? So I think purpose is alignment. I think it's alignment within yourself, alignment with whatever is in your heart. I recently stopped saying brainstorming and started saying heart storytelling because I feel like sometimes brainstorming could lead to overthinking, but if we are heart centered and we align, then we can really go into the purpose.
Man, that's powerful. Heartwarming story other than brainstorming. I might borrow that for a little bit.
Please do.
When you hear the word reforge, what comes to mind?
Life. I think it's the only way. I when I think of reforging is I think of the story of the wounded warrior, the warrior that left and came back to the village with the scars and also not just the scars to show that the warrior had been in battle, but also the wisdom to say, I was able to heal them. And now I can show you how you can do that. That's what comes up.
Wounded warrior. That's one I haven't heard. I like that one. That's good. Pam, what's something that no, before we get into that, is somebody out there today that's listening to the episode or watching it and they have no idea how to come back in their life, their business, their finances, their relationship, their health, and they're looking to make a comeback and they have no idea where to start. What's one tool or piece of advice that you could give the listener that's going through that, that's looking to reforge their life?
I would say decide. You just have to decide that you can. Because I ground myself a lot in the teachings of the earth, of Mother Earth, and I witness how the earth literally goes through cycles every so many months. And winter, we could say, is a cycle of stillness. It could be considered a cycle of hardship for some. And so, what I would say to someone who's going through something hard, maybe this is your winter, but know that spring always comes after winter. But you have to decide that it's time.
Right. Right. No matter what season it is, make that decision to move forward. The decision is such a powerful tool when it comes to being successful. Every successful entrepreneur I've come across knows how important it is to make it.
Decided. Yes.
Absolutely. 100%.
Like Yoda says, to do or do not. There's no try.
There's no such thing. Remove that. Remove that word out of your vocabulary. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what's something the audience doesn't know about Pam that you enjoy doing for?
Oof. I'm very open, but I think what the audience doesn't know is that that one's a fun challenge. I would say what they don't know is that perhaps who they see or they hear, they might believe that I have it together, but I don't. What the audience doesn't know is that I don't know. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I make everyday decisions that I can.
That's fun in itself, right? Not
Right.
not have to be figuring it out along the way and going through all the mess, but we kind of throw against the wall and see if it sticks, and then that's gonna help us grow. Let's go there. That's what
Yeah.
that is. That's the whole. That's what the process is about. That's what it's supposed to be about, and that's vital. That's dope. I love that. Pan, thank you so much for coming through. I knew when we connected that this was gonna be dope, and man, you and above and beyond the expectations. I had them up here, and you brought it up here, so that was.
Thank you.
uh,
Thank you for having me.
And for all the listeners and viewers, thank y'all for listening, checking it out, and please don't forget LFSS. So important. It's a favor I'm asking for. Like, follow, subscribe, and most importantly, share, because there's somebody out there today that's not checking out the episode and they're looking to make a comeback in their life, whether it's in their business, finances, health, relationships, whatever it is, and they have no idea where to start. And you sharing the episode help change their life. But don't forget to share it, man. And thank y'all for coming through. Stay productive, stay profitable, and stay blessed, y'all.
You've been listening to Reforge Your Life with your host, Joe Rivera. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about Joe Rivera and how he can help you or your organization reforge your life and regain your place at the top, head on over to withjoerivera.com and follow Joe on all social platforms. The Reforge Your Life podcast was produced by Thrive Loud Productions. Thanks for listening.